paper on stands that is automatically fed, etc. So the equipment's getting better, okay? So just figure we're going to settle at around, so originally the figure was 20,000 printers, 2020. We got together about 9 months later for a different conference. We were all talking, we all had sort of different sets of information, etc. And we all agreed, in fact, it was going to be 20,000 printers by 2018. 6 months after that, we were all on a panel. We were in a discussion again, and we came to the sort of unsettling realization that it was going to be 20,000 printers by 2016. Okay? Why? Why did we change the figure that quickly? And this is really what I want to impress upon you. No one has expected for technology to increase at such an exponential rate. It's moving so fast, it is almost impossible to truly keep up with it. You have to have an area of expertise that you can follow, and it's still like drinking from a fire hose. Okay, I mean, I will tell you just in the augmented reality QR code color field that I really follow closely, I simply can't keep up with it. I probably get, realistically, 50 to 60 emails a day just on those topics alone. Okay? It's just, and it's coming from all over the world. I mean, I am global. I get information as much from New Zealand and Australia as I do from Europe, from Asia, and Canada. It's coming at you so quickly. So the idea, and the bottom line is, as a sidebar, if you're doing what you're doing for a living, there is no way in the world you can do what I do for a living. This is a full-time job, you know. You've got your own full-time job. So it's exactly, I mean, we are truly in debt to McArdle for being able to put on seminars like this, because it's an opportunity for us to interface and talk and exchange in a quick sort of summit, if you will. But the idea is that no one expected technology to move this quickly. Okay? And the other problem is, if you really talk to the macroeconomists and you say, where are we going? They will be very honest with you and say, we're not sure. There are too many variables that we cannot check, that are not, that they're not in place for long enough. They are organic, they are moving. We are being more impacted right now by natural disasters than ever before. Does that make sense? I mean, do any of you remember that there was an earthquake in Chile that wiped out the ports? So all of the raw materials that were being produced out of South America could not be exported. It completely disrupted the Asian market. 30% of all the raw materials that they needed, they simply could not get because it couldn't be exported. It changed the global market as we know it. The tsunami in Japan wiped out corporations that, to the point that it is almost impossible for the companies in the United States who depend on Japanese parts to be able to continue with production because they simply can't get the parts. That's a disaster. That is a market changer. How do you predict that? How do you know? Gas going to $5 will change our market. That will be a disaster. So, the other part of it is, quite frankly, who will be the next Google? Who will be the next Facebook? Did anybody expect Pinterest to grow as quickly as it did? How many of you are doing anything with Pinterest? It's fabulous. I mean, if you have an opportunity to go to it, it's a great way of being able, you can pick a topic, and what it does is it gathers all of the information and videos and everything in that topic and gives it to you as a little here. You know, now here's a perfect example. I don't use it professionally, you know, but I definitely use it personally. And it's fabulous. It's wonderful in terms of the way. Nobody even knew what it was a year ago, right? Or Tumblr, or Foursquare. You see my point?
What is Tumblr? You mentioned that earlier.
It's a place where you can, it's like an intranet. You can use it within your company so that you can type in personal chat board, blogs, chat board, chat room, that kind of thing, real time. Also post things, I want you to read this, what is your reaction to it? It's a wonderful, it makes great sense. It's not right for all companies, you need to have enough people so that it's, but you can also use it as a group. Docs and lovers of, Washington DC can have their own Tumblr site where they all talk about their dogs, or Corvette owners, or so it's a group. It is a software that allows you to create groups where you can have internal blogs, internal chat boards, etc., with a password, log in, log on. Brilliant. Really changed. By the way, you want to devastate a company in a heartbeat? Start a bad rumor. No. Serious as a heart attack. And where do you start it? You started on Tumblr. You started on some of the alternatives, and you put it in a blog where it gets picked up and it is then pasted to, and it goes viral. Next thing you know, you've got a company focusing an enormous amount of money and an enormous amount of time doing, basically crisis, prevention and, intersection. So anyway, I wanted to start that conversation with you about the idea of these paradigm shifts and the fact that there are going to be losers. Let me put it this way, and let me impress this upon you in no uncertain terms. Are all of you familiar with Drupa? Okay, it's happening right now. Let me tell you something. There are things happening at Drupa right now that will completely change how we do what we do. When I went to Graph Expo last year in Chicago, it was like a social gathering. Nobody was selling anything because everybody was waiting for Drupa. If you're not familiar with Drupa, I'm sorry. It is the largest print show in the world. It's a global show, happens every 4 years. DRUPA.
Stands for token papier or print
Yes.
and paper.
Yes.
Started last week.
Yes, started last week. It lasts 2 weeks. Everyone will be there. It is where all of the new equipment, and I'm going to talk to you about it when we talk about disruptive technology, but it's fabulous. So yeah, and here's the interesting thing. It's not even so much, rather than you think about who are going to be the losers, what I'd rather you reposition your thinking is who are going to be the new winners. Perfect example, a company like OSE. In the past, not a big player, a lot of great copiers, mostly an OEM, they made equipment for other folks, will become one of the names on your lips forever because of their new technology. Companies like Canon Minolta, totally taking over where Kodak had once owned the space for the longest time. Not going to be there anymore. Kodak's not going to be there anymore. The idea of the next press is going to be purchased by somebody else and then brought to market, possibly under the same name, possibly under a new name. My point is this. We look at print. I'm working on a global white paper, and it really talks about where is print going to be and what are we doing. And the paper is actually based on the concept of Got Milk. And that the idea that Got Milk as a campaign, do you mind indulge me? Take 5 minutes? It's, everybody knows Got Milk campaign, right?
Yes.
Okay, here's where it becomes really interesting. The American Dairy Association was losing 3 to 4% revenue compounded over 12 years. Staggering loss, okay? And yet, they were doing everything right. Totally everything right. Perfect example. I'm going to ask you a question. You may not immediately remember, don't worry. Does anybody remember the campaign before Got Milk? No, it's only because Got Milk was so huge, it simply, it was like, an eclipse. Whatever was there before, you couldn't see it because the sun was blocking it out. It was milk does a body good. You remember that?
Yeah.
And the minute I say that, everybody goes, oh yeah, I love that campaign, right? Long-term campaign. Now here's the interesting thing. When Goodby and Silverstein took over, because they were brought in by American Dairy Association, they were like, help us, please. We're in a world of hurt. They did a huge market research. And I gotta tell you, when I say huge, their control was 40,000, which is, for market research, is huge. All demographics, age, you know, you name it, all demographics. And they did the survey, and what they found out was above 95% in all categories knew that milk does a body good, knew that milk had calcium, knew that it prevents osteoporosis, knew that it was a part of a balanced diet, all the right things that we were all taught as kids everywhere in the world. We all knew that milk was a body good, right? Downside, they were getting outsold by a lot. What do you think was outselling milk? Sodas, bottled water, coffee, gourmet coffee, and by the way, sort of underneath that was sports drinks, Gatorades, power drinks, those kinds of things. But along for it. But the top three: bottled water, soda, and gourmet coffee. We all know that these are not necessary. Water, yes, good for you, but why would we spend $1.25 for something you can get out of the tap, you know, or buy a unit that filters, right? We know that, but because here's the interesting thing: in the United States, although we talk about how, you know, important money is, etc., we will pay for convenience, and we will pay for service always. Does that make sense? The idea that all of a sudden I've got this container in a plastic that is recyclable, that you can put anywhere, carry in your purse, in your briefcase, whatever, and you go and then you feel better about yourself, Yahoo! And in fact, I'm actually going to sell you little packets of flavoring that you can put in it, shake it, drink it, and you know, and then I've got my vitamins, and I got my this, and I got, you know, great. Why? Because, and I'm leading you because the reality is, and this is a key, please, because in the United States, we are a consumer culture. We love the new shiny object. Does that make sense? The new shiny object has to have three things. A, it has to make us believe that there is a technology involved in it that somehow is going to impact our quality, speed, price equation on a personal or on a professional level. Cool? We also believe that contained in it is a silver bullet. That silver bullet is going to bring us something new, futuristic, something cool. Hard to say about water, but the fact is, what we came to realize was that most of the United States was dehydrated. We weren't drinking enough water, and basically I could literally take the Milk Does a Body Good campaign and change it and say water does a body good, and then give you all the reasons why water does a body good, and I've got my campaign, right? And the last thing in the United States, now this does not relate to this, but is very important to our conversation. The third aspect is that it must have an entertainment component. Key point. Very quickly. Michael Crichton wrote a brilliant book, slightly overlooked, but he made a comment that was a 30,000-foot view, and actually it was more than 30, it was 100,000 foot. And he talked about where we are on a socio-anthropomorphic level. And what he said was, as a species, our first priority was food, right? Shelter, which also meant heat. That lasted tens of thousands of years, okay? Then we became agrarian, stable, and then that meant that we had constant sources of food that we could count on. That lasted tens of thousands of years. Where we became was the next priority, the next imperative was healthcare.